I prefer to deal directly with the Australian people, and it's been a successful relationship.
Well, thanks for all your support.
Oh, he's a nice man. I mean, he really is.
G'day. 1983 went much as I'd planned it. I dominated it.
She said, "Do you come from a land down under?"
Any boss who sacks anyone for not turning up today is a bum. On your marks. Get set.
But how much of that description that I gave there, which is from the National Times, is true? I take it swears like a trooper?
Oh, yeah?
This one I'm not quite sure about. Performs like a playboy?
I had my moments.
He was a golden character in many ways. You know, he was a one-off, he's an original, but he always had as a genuine belief in the goodness of the Australian people and a genuine determination to make things better for them.
I'll buy you a drink, Gazza.
Hooray for Bob Hawke! Hooray!
Hawke leadership showed that if you've got a leader seen as being above class, above party, a consensus leader, the Labor Party can be a majority party.
Familiar scenes as excited schoolchildren milled around the Prime Minister. Some of them held...
Born Robert James Lee Hawke, but Australia knew him as Bob. Bob Hawke's life started off in a tiny speck on the South Australian map called Bordertown. Born to Congregationalist minister Clem and his schoolteacher wife Ellie.
My mother had a fanatical commitment to education.
Ellie Hawke felt in her every bone that her son was destined for greatness, that he would one day be Prime Minister.
Well, I think that Mum seemed to have had some view about it. You know, when I was born, I don't know, she said there was something special, but that's a bit embarrassing to talk about.
Mother Hawke was to be right on the money. Her bright little spark became a talented pupil. The Rhodes Scholar took economics at Oxford. On his return, he went to the Australian Council of Trade Unions, where he fought for higher wages at the Conciliation and Arbitration Commission.
When you're president of the ACTU, not even a seriously rigged back can prevent the paperwork piling up or stop the phone calls coming.
Where he was extraordinarily popular.
Well, he sort of turned leading the ACTU into a species of show business. There was an industrial dispute, there was a moment of tension before he, as president of the ACTU, came in. He'd arrive on the scene, he'd bring the two sides together, he'd produce what seemed a well-crafted compromise.
It was at this point that his pledge of temperance to his mother Ellie went thoroughly out the window. Bob Hawke, the ACTU president, was a dedicated drinker.
He probably used alcohol more than any public figure, any leader in our history.
I tend, I think, occasionally to take too much refuge in having a drink.
He was drunk a lot of the time. He obviously used alcohol as a way of breaking down barriers, of gaining quick intimacy, steering people towards some emotion-laden compromise.
Mr. Hawke, in a recent newspaper article, you said that you believed that you had the makings of a Prime Minister.
He gave up the grog and in 1980 became a member for the safe Victorian federal seat of Wills.
Just said to myself, if you're going to become Prime Minister of this country, you can't afford ever to be in a position where you can make a fool of yourself or of your country. And I never had a drop by the whole period I was in Parliament.
The prime ministerial ambitions took 3 years to be realised. Liberal Prime Minister Malcolm Fraser was on the nose, but there were questions about Labor opposition leader Bill Hayden's ability to wrest government from him. The hugely popular Hawke was the obvious alternative. The deal was done in January 1983 in Brisbane.
Even as the party's parliamentary executive arrived for today's meeting here in Brisbane, Mr Hayden's fate had been sealed. He'd been approached after private meetings overnight and reluctantly advised to stand aside.
I believe that a drover's dog could lead the Labor Party to victory, the way the country is and the way the opinion polls are showing up for the Labor Party.
Bill Hayden has done a remarkably courageous thing.
Malcolm Fraser, who was very nervous of the possibility of facing Hawke instead of Hayden, decided to go to Yarralumla and call an election, thinking he better call it quickly while he still got Hayden. However, as he was in the process of doing that, we had already instated Bob.
Australia's most dramatic day in politics since November the 11th, 1975.
So it was I think, the greatest political coincidence in Australian political history, the way that worked. People were so excited, and it was like that from then on. That campaign was remarkable.
Mr. Fraser, did you have any second thoughts this afternoon when you found out that you would like to face Mr. Hawke and not Mr. Hayden?
On the contrary, I had a little more relish. It'll be the first election in which two Labour leaders have been knocked off in one go.
That was not to be. Bob Hawke won in a landslide.
Looking down at the crowd, which is down below here at the tally room in Canberra, waving.
Labor needs, to pull in the middle-class voters, Labor needs a nimble-footed leader who can straddle the divisions and fundamentally get middle-class people to record a vote for a trade union, working class-based party. And Hawke was preeminently good at that.
In partnership with his brash treasurer, Hawke set about transforming the Australian economy through the historic wage accord between big business and unions.
Mr. Hawke was elected on a promise of bringing Australians together. Well, after just 5 weeks, there they are. The captains of industry, the union bosses, the politicians.
When the phone started ringing in dealing rooms this morning, trading was frenetic.
Floating the Australian dollar and tariff cuts.
The idea of the Workers' Party, the trade union-based party, a Labor or Social Democratic party, opening the economy up to market-based reforms, that was the fusion that was special about Bob Hawke's leadership and his partnership with Keating.
He wanted to be Prime Minister, but he wanted to be Prime Minister for a purpose. And because he went there for a purpose, he's prepared to take risks. Politicians these days are not big risk takers. He was a very big risk taker.
There were also huge social policy shifts, like embracing environmentalism, going to the High Court to save the Franklin Dam.
My government will honour the promises that we have made in respect to Tasmania.
They were very heady years for environmentalism, and Bob Hawke was the captain of the ship.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister of Australia.
In the foreign policy area, he gave a new definition to Australian nationalism. He made us a major player on the global stage. As we globalised, as we took advantage of the opportunities that were there for us to compete internationally, we became a different country.
He was the master of the media opportunity, embracing television like no other before him.
Well, I can get nicked now, really. And if I want to appear coatless talking to a yarn event, I will.
The next guest I've got is no stranger to us all. It's our Prime Minister, Mr. Bob Hawke. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Harry. Thank you.
Bob had the habits of an ordinary Australian bloke. He liked the races. He had liked to drink.
He makes us all look well dressed.
Hawke-era Defence Minister Kim Beazley says the PM was always across his cabinet submissions, but brought a common touch to his understanding of them.
Bob would say, you know, it's really good, it's very interesting, I've read through this submission. But, you know, I was at the races the other day and Bill Smith came up to me and he said this about your issue. Now, Bill's got a point.
He did at times have a famously fiery temper.
I made that statement that I will not be making a challenge, and I adhere to that statement. And now, if you want to do your speculation, do it without me. I've made my position clear.
But you could kill it stone dead here and now by saying, no, come on, now grab hold of yourself. I've made it quite clear. I've said it 3 times. Now, you are just being a bloody pest.
Mr. Hawke, could I ask you whether you feel a little embarrassed tonight at the blood that's on your hands?
You're not improving, are you? I thought you'd make a better start to the year than that. It's a ridiculous question. You know it's ridiculous. I have no blood on my hands.
You look a bit tired.
You don't cease to be a husband. You don't cease to be a father.
He wore his heart on his sleeve, most memorably when he discovered his daughter Rosalind and her partner had a heroin problem.
Like any father, I love my daughter. I trust her.
That, I think, was what was so difficult for Bob, to just not be able to, if you like, absorb that shock properly or do the grieving about that shock. It was sitting there like a lump.
With him through it all was his loyal wife and mother to their children, Hazel Hawke. She had weathered being married to a man who was often a workaholic with a wandering eye. But Susan Ryan says that his reputation as a ladies' man should not be confused with sexism. Ryan was Australia's first female minister appointed by Hawke, who at the ACTU had championed equal pay for women.
It was then a great relief as a young woman, a feminist with very clear feminist objectives in all the work I did, to work with a man who was relaxed about women. See, with Bob, he never worried about women because he knew he was better than anyone else, and that included all women.
In a confidential agreement, Hawke had pledged to step aside from the top job by 1990 in favour of his ambitious treasurer. When that deadline passed, with Hawke showing no sign of bowing out, Keating launched a challenge and eventually toppled the Prime Minister in 1991. The dumping of Hawke led to a bitter rift between Hawke and Keating, which lasted years.
The circumstances were upsetting, but looking back on it, one of the enormous pluses of the end of my Prime Ministership was that it led to the situation where I married Blanche.
After he left the top office, Bob Hawke ended his rocky marriage with Hazel Hawke, who sadly later died after a battle with Alzheimer's disease. He resumed his relationship with his biographer and former lover, Blanche Del Puget. They married in 1995.
And that has been, just an indescribable joy in my life.
The boy from Border Town became a successful businessman with a harbourside mansion to show for it. He didn't lose his sense of humour and from time to time enjoyed the odd cold beer.
They're going skull, skull, skull. And the great man Bobby Hawke nailed it.
Still Labor to his bootstraps in his 80s, he wowed the comrades at the ACTU National Conference in 2012.
So here we go.
He campaigned for his ALP successors.
Help Bill Shorten and Labor stand up to protect Medicare.
This Medicare scare campaign raised the ire of the coalition, but in it, Bob Hawke helped almost tilt Malcolm Turnbull out of office.
Right till the end, he's packed a political punch.
Bob Hawke, ladies and gentlemen.
In whatever way you can, try and help those around you. This is both the right and the good thing to do, but also it'll make your own life more satisfying.
I always smile when I think of him because he was always, twinkling and laughing. I think he was like a great burst of sunshine on the Australian political scene, and easy to like, easy to get on with, but with such a brain and such determination that he changed Australia for the better, and we should all really thank our lucky stars that he's been part of our lives.
Hi, I'm Lee Sales. Thanks for watching this story. If you'd like to watch more of 7:30's stories, they are on the left of your screen. And tap on the button below to subscribe and get the latest from ABC News.